All right. So before we get going into our prayer list, before we get into that part of our service, I would like to talk to you guys real quick about something that I really want you to be focused on. As we just discussed, we're going to be coming together next week to work as a church, surrounding some things as a church that we need to work on, to focus on, and to really incorporate into the things that we're doing in order to help us with what we are trying to accomplish this summer. As we're going through this summer, most of you know we've already been out into our neighborhood and gone around through our neighborhood at least once. We're going to be continuing to do that through the summer, and we're just really trying to reach our neighborhood and to help this church be an integral part of it. As we've done that, and I've asked you guys before on Monday through Friday while we're out doing this to be in prayer. And I know that some of you have been coming to talk to me about that and have discussed some of that with me. But as we enter this next phase of what we're going to be doing starting next week, I would like to just share a passage with you from the Old Testament found in the book of 1 Samuel. It's in chapter 7 if you guys would like to follow along with me. And I want to look at this real quick just because I want to make sure that we're focused where we need to focus as we're going through this. Now, before I read this passage to you, just a little background. Israel, as we have known and seen Israel do throughout the Old Testament, they have their ups and downs. They have their times where they follow God. They have their times where they turn their back from God. And it just kind of goes back and forth as we go through the Old Testament. And at this particular point, if you guys remember the Ark of the Covenant, maybe some of you have seen Indiana Jones, you know, the thing with the lightning shooting out of it. That's what we're going to be talking about, or what this leads up to. The Philistines had just gotten into a battle with Israel. They had captured the Ark of the Covenant. They had taken the Ark of the Covenant away from the Israelites. Now, as they had taken that away, they realized real quick, because they tried to keep the Ark of the Covenant in a specific place, realized that every place that they had it, and they tried to move it around to different places, every place they had the Ark of the Covenant, bad things happened. And finally they got together and like, look, we all know the story from Egypt. We all know what happened with them. Things are happening bad with us. We need to get rid of this thing. It's not like we need to play any games, because it wasn't until the Israelites got what they wanted with Egypt that God was able to step back and stop doing the things that he was doing to Egypt. So they're like, we need to get rid of this. And that's exactly what they were working on doing right when this is going on. And the Israelites, they feel emboldened now that they got the Ark of the Covenant back, and they're wanting to go out and kind of redo what they were supposed to be doing, to revision what they were supposed to be. And that's where we find ourselves in chapter 7. But before we go there, just a little bit of background. We find in the book of Psalms in chapter 99, it says, Moses and Aaron were among his priests. Samuel was also among those who called upon his name. They called to the Lord, and he answered them. Now, we see this in chapter 99, and this kind of shows that Samuel was one of these that when it comes to prayer, he was very in tune with what he was doing. He was very focused and very knowing in what he needed to do. He kept his eyes where they needed to be. So that's where we start in this passage. Go to chapter 7 of 1 Samuel, verse 1. And the man of Kiriath-Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord and brought it to the house of Abinadab on the hill. And they consecrated his son to have charge of the ark of the Lord. From the day that the ark was lodged at Kiriath-Jearim, a long time passed, some 20 years, and all the house of Israel lamented over the Lord. And Samuel said to all the house of Israel, if you're returning to the Lord with all your heart, then put away the foreign gods and the Ashtaroth from among you, and direct your heart to the Lord, and serve him only. And he will deliver you out of the land of the Philistines. So the people of Israel put away the Baals and the Ashtaroth, and they served the Lord only. Then Samuel said, gather all Israel together at Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you. So they gathered at Mizpah and drew the water and poured it out before the Lord and fasted on that day and said there, we have sinned against the Lord. And Samuel judged the people of Israel at Mizpah. Now when the Philistines heard that the people of Israel had gathered at Mizpah, the lords of the Philistines went up against Israel. And when the people of Israel heard of it, they were afraid of the Philistines. And the people of Israel said to Samuel, do not cease to cry out to the Lord our God for us, that he may save us from the hand of the Philistines. So Samuel took a nursing lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. And Samuel cried out to the Lord for Israel, and the Lord answered him. As Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines took near and to attack Israel. But the Lord thundered with a mighty sound that day against the Philistines and threw them into confusion. And they were defeated before Israel. And the men of Israel went out from Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and struck them as far as below Bethkar. Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shin and called its name Ebenezer. For he said, "Till now the Lord has helped us." So the Philistines were subdued and did not again enter the territory of Israel. And the hand of the Lord was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel. Okay, now as we look at this, you might be wondering, okay, well, you see Samuel in here praying for the Israelites, but what does this really mean to what we've got going on in the summer? Well, I want to point you towards three different things. First, in the first part of this passage, in verses 3 through 5, we see putting your attention on the right thing. You've got Samuel calling them to say, okay, if you're going to return to the Lord, if you're really going to do this, you need to make sure that you put your eyes where they need to be. And that's the same thing we need to be doing right now. As we're going out and doing these things, we may start seeing some good things happen as we've already started to see. But that's not us. That is God. And as we're going out, we may have the tendency to want to pat ourselves on the back and be happy with what we're doing. But we need to make sure as we're doing it, and I'm not saying on any level that it's not appreciative for what you guys are doing, but I am saying as we're doing this, our eyes need to be set on the fact that we are doing this for God's glory, to accomplish His purpose in our church. So we need to make sure that we keep our eyes on the right thing. Just as Israel had drifted from God and they came back, we are at this point where we're saying, okay, we've gone through a few things as a church, but we need to make sure that we're focused where we need to be as God is moving us forward. Number two, you see as we go into verses 5 and 6, that when Samuel gets into the prayer, the Israelites, they're able to turn their attention and keep focused on the correct viewpoint. So number one, you want to make sure that your attention's on the right thing. But once it's there, you need to make sure it's on the correct viewpoint. You see in verses 5 and 6, he calls Israel to gather together. And he drew all them out. And the Israelites' response was, "We have sinned against the Lord." Well, they saw what was going on. They saw and made sure that they had the correct viewpoint of where they were at. So as we go out as a church throughout this summer, we need to make sure that we have continued the correct viewpoint. And then lastly, as it comes into verses 8 through 11, we see that prayer leads to a correct action. We need to make sure, again, and I can't stress this enough, as we are going out, that what we're doing is not for us to be able to stand back and say, hey, look at what we're doing. Look at all the things that are happening around our church, the things that are happening in our community, the things that are happening in our neighborhood. And look at all this. We're a part of this. And that's great that you're a part of it, but that's not the main thing. The correct action is what we're called to do as Christians, to go out and to spread the gospel, to bring the good news to others, to help others that need it, that can't do it themselves. And that's what we're doing, and that's what we're going to continue to do as we go out this summer. So I just want to stress, as we get ready for this next Wednesday, to be able to come together and put all this where it needs to be and in focus. As we come up with the things that we're going to discuss, make sure that number one, you're focusing on the right thing. Number two, make sure you've got the correct viewpoint. And number three, make sure it leads to correct action. So the bottom line here, guys, as we go through this next week, I just want to stress to you, spend some time in prayer. Spend some time working on making sure that as we come together as a church, that we will be focused where we need to focus on doing God's will in this.